We're going to make a sentence builder resource now based on the table that you can see in front of you there. It's basically the parts of ser in the present tense combined with a dozen or so adjectives. And you can see that the adjectives on the right hand side are presented in two blocks, one which is physical and the other block which is to do with like personality adjectives. And each adjective that's listed on the Spanish side has all of its different permutations listed, so that you can see that, for example, for tall we have alto / a, so that's alto or alta, and then we have the brackets s, which we will tell our students we need to add if it's plural. So our options for tall are alto, alta, altos or altas. Now, as with any paper sentence builder or something that's presented to students in this way, it should be fairly straightforward for them to work out how to manipulate the language to put the adjectives in their correct form next to the subject pronouns in their correct form. The sentences themselves that it generates are not particularly interesting. You've just got things like I am tall, he is slim, we are fat, etc. Now, I'm going to show you how I took essentially this information and made it into one of the premium resources that we find on the Language Gym section of SentenceBuilders.com. So we go to the Sentence Builders website, we're logged in, we go to Resources, we click on Create New Resource, and we have our resource creation tool. The first thing I'm going to do is paste in the subject pronouns from our table. So there they are, exactly as we saw them in the Word document. Now you notice that we have some combined forms there. So we've got nosotros, nosotras together, vosotros, vosotras together, and ellos, ellas together. Now the problem with this from an interactive activities point of view is that all of our sentences generated if we put our text in this way are going to include those slashes, so that whenever we have a sentence in English which says, for example, we are tall, or whatever it may be, we're going to require our students to write nosotros / nosotras, and clearly that isn't ideal. What we want them to be able to do is to differentiate between the masculine form and the feminine form. So we're going to include a different form for each one. Okay, so now I've separated our different forms out into masculines and feminines, so now we have a separate entry for we masculine, we feminine, you all masculine and you all feminine, they masculine and they feminine. Now there isn't necessarily any reason why we need to go any further than that in terms of separating out those items, but I think it's quite useful to show students how those items fit with the 6 forms of the verb, so it's quite a good idea to get them used to using the 6 different forms and seeing them as 6 different forms from quite early on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to divide this one cell into 6 different cells, one for each form of the verb. So we'll split this into 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'll copy the various parts into the correct places. So now we have our subject pronoun split into 6 different groups to match the 6 different parts of the verb. And if we scroll down, we can see what our table looks like so far. So we have our 6 different sections there. Now let's have a look at our adjectives. So if I click into the next column here, I can then paste in our adjectives from the table. Now you can see from this that, as explained before, we've got all of our combinations put together as one. This is really not a good idea. The problem with combining masculine and feminine adjectives in a sentence builder in this way is that because we have no indication of masculine or feminine with, for example, I am, yo soy, and the same with tú eres, you are, it would be impossible for the student to know which version of the adjective they're supposed to write, whether the masculine one or the feminine one. And if you don't stipulate, then what you're requiring them to do is to write out both versions, so they'd be writing autos/a. So that's far from ideal. So what we need to do is we need to separate the adjectives out into masculine and feminine, and in fact what I'm going to do is to separate them into singular and plural as well, so that we're going to have singular adjectives at the top of our table and we're going to have plural adjectives at the bottom of our table to match with the plural subject pronouns. So I want a plural section at the bottom, so I'll keep splitting until we get to the right position so that we can then combine the bottom section of plurals. So all of these here we can merge as plurals. Okay, and the top section I want to split into masculine and feminine. Obviously we've got 3 cells here and we want to split this into 2, and so for balance what I'm going to do is I'll split it into 4 and then merge them. I'll split that middle one into 2 and then we can merge those 2. Merge the top ones as well. And now we just need to copy the content into the various places. I'm going to copy it whole for the time being, and then we'll have to change it when we've placed it in its different places. Okay, so we have a masculine section, a feminine section, and a plural section, which is all together as one at the moment. So what we're going to do here is we're going to leave just the masculine version, and we're going to add a note to say that it's masculine, brackets M after each masculine version of the adjectives. And I'll pause while I do the rest of that for you. So now you can see that I've removed all these slashes and extra bits of information and left only the masculine version of the adjective, and after the English I've put a space and then brackets M to inform the person who's looking at the sentence builder that these are the masculine forms of the adjectives. Okay, and now we're going to do the same with the feminine ones. So we remove the O and the bracket information and we add F. And I'm going to do the same with the rest. So now we have our masculine singular adjectives here and our feminine singular adjectives in the cell below, and we're going to quickly colour code those so that it's clear at a glance what the different sections refer to. Now looking down at the plural adjectives, we don't have the same problem of having to distinguish between masculine and feminine because we already have references to M and F along with our different subject pronouns. So what we can do here is something slightly different. We can include masculine and feminine versions of each of the adjectives. So let's click there to edit that. What we're going to do is we're going to add altos /as, and we're going to say that that is tall, and we're going to put a note to say that it's plural there. And I'm going to do the same with all of the rest of these adjectives. Okay, so I've changed all of those adjectives so that we have masculine adjectives in the top cell, feminine adjectives in the middle cell, and plural masculine and feminine adjectives in the bottom cell. At the bottom of the table there I've also colour coded the plural pronouns just to make it look nice, and you can see that we don't have any issues there because all of our cells there flow from left to right into that same box. However, towards the top of the table we do have an issue because yo soy can only currently flow into the masculine section, tú eres can go into both, and él and ella can only flow into the feminine. So we need to add a flow column, which I'll do by adding there. I'm going to merge, actually in this case I'm going to merge the bottom 3 sections like this, and then all of the top sections. Okay, so now what we've created is a situation where our flow works from left to right. I'm not liking the size of the top section of the table. It looks too distorted and stretched, so what we're going to do there is we're going to change the column view so that these adjectives here take up less space vertically, and we end up with a more balanced looking table, so that we don't have one section that's way taller than all the rest. And with those dimensions, it'll be easy to view on any laptop or computer screen. So we've solved our flow problem, but we now have a problem where we can have he and she both going into masculine and feminine adjectives. I've shown in other videos that one way that you can do this is by separating them into separate cells and then excluding cell combinations, so that, for example, a cell containing just he couldn't be mixed with any of the feminine adjectives, and a cell with she couldn't be mixed with any of the masculine adjectives. This time though, because there isn't ever any one fixed way of creating a resource, I'm going to use word-based exclusions. So I'll just add those in now. And what we're going to say is that whenever we have he is, that can't go with the brackets F, and whenever we have she is, that can't go with brackets M. So we're saying that he is can't go with feminine adjectives and she is can't go with masculine adjectives. Notice that I've used the English side here, because if I put ls and then put the F, that wouldn't find any matches, because the F and the M is actually on the English side. It's in the translation. So currently what that word-based exclusion will say is it will look for all sentences that contain both he is and brackets F and rule them out, so they're not used for any of the activities. And the same with she is and brackets M. So we'll save the changes there. So if we now scroll down and we look at the sentences generated by our resource, we'll see that we have I am tall masculine, I am short masculine, etc. Same with you. So you are plus masculine adjectives, and the same with he is. And then we have I and you with feminines, and then we have she with feminine adjectives. So that's all looking good. Then we get down to the plurals, and we have lots of problems, because we have we masculine, are tall plural. Now obviously we put the PL into the table because we want it to be clear to anyone looking at the sentence builder table that those adjectives are plural forms. But in fact, in our sentences we don't need the plural note, because we know that if it's we, and if it's you all, and if it's they, then we're always going to be referring to plurals. So what we can do at this point is we can add some transformations to remove those plural markers from our sentences. So we go to our transformations, and we can say, for example, that if our sentence contains we, then any reference to plural, so I'm going to put a space, PL, is removed. Okay, so if you look at that carefully, to the left hand side of the vertical pipe we have the word we with a space, and so we're saying whenever we see a sentence that contains we, then we're going to remove the brackets PL and the space that's in front of it. We don't need to include a hashtag here, because it isn't at the beginning or the end of our transformation line. So you only need to add a hashtag to represent a space if you're doing that at the beginning or at the end of a transformation line. In this case, it's not necessary. Okay, and we can do the same for they. We can say they. So remember that vertical pipe means that it's a lookup, and we're saying look up all sentences containing they and remove the PL. And we're going to do the same with you all. For all sentences containing you all, we're going to transform that space brackets PL to nothing. And if we save those changes and we scroll down and have a look at our sentences, we'll see that we now have removed the PLs. So we masculine are tall, we are short, you all masculine are tall, you all feminine, they masculine, they feminine. Okay, so the plural references have been removed from our sentences. So that's looking good. The only problem we have now is we have on the Spanish side, all those plural sentences contain mixed masculine and feminine adjectives. So we've got gordos, as, guapos, as, etc. So we need to transform those out as well. So here's how we do that. We'll go back to our transformations and we need to add in some more lookups. This time, because we're dealing with the Spanish side, we need to make our lookups reference the Spanish side. So we're going to do another lookup, and this time it's going to be on the Spanish side. Now obviously we need to be looking here to see whether we're dealing with masculine sentences or feminine sentences so that we know how we can change the adjectives to the masculine version or the feminine version. So here's how we can do that. We do a lookup saying nosotros, which is the masculine form, and we say in any sentences containing nosotros, we're going to change that os, as, to just os. And with nosotras, we're going to change the os, as, to just as. Okay, and we do the same with the rest of the pronouns. So now we've added those lookups and transformations to all of the plural subject pronouns. So with the masculine form, we change the os, as to os. With the feminine form, we change the os, as to as. And so on for vosotros, vosotras, ellos, ellas. And we save the changes. And let's have a look at our sentences again. To verify the content. Okay, so now for example, you all feminine are tall, vosotros sois altas. And the masculine, you all masculine are muscular, vosotros sois musculosos. So now we have the appropriate forms for all of our adjectives. And if we scroll up again, because something else has occurred to me, look at the she sentences. She is tall, feminine. She is short, feminine. Clearly, if we have sentences where the subject is she in English, there's no need for that feminine marker. Similarly, when we have he, we don't need the masculine marker. We do need those markers when we're talking about I, because we need to know whether we're talking about the feminine version of I or the masculine version of I, and the same with you. So you are tall without any marker could be tú eres alto, or it could be tú eres alta, and we need to know which one we're talking about. But what we need to do now then is remove those markers for the he and she sentences, and again we'll do that using a lookup similar to the one that we saw before. So transformations, and we're going to say if our sentence contains he, then we can remove all reference to masculine, and you notice that I put the space in front of the brackets M, because if I didn't, I'd be leaving an extra space in there, and that might cause some of the activities to go wrong. And the same with she, so we're going to say that if our sentence contains she, that's the lookup pipe, space, brackets F, convert to nothing. So we save the changes, and we can look at our sentences, and we can see that we now have a masculine and feminine marker next to I am and you are, but not with he and not with she. So now everything is looking pretty much as it should be. You may be wondering why I've used lookups for the transformations. Some of the transformations would require a lookup anyway. For example, the last couple I did there, if we just said to remove all occurrences of M and F, then we've removed them for sentences containing I and you as well. So what we're doing by adding this lookup is we're saying only remove the M and the F if our sentence contains he and she. And obviously these lookups are necessary here for this whole plural section, because we're saying only change the OS and AS to OS if the sentence contains nosotros. If it contains nosotras, we need to change it in a different way. So that's the purpose of those lookups. Another reason for using lookups in this way is so that you can do things differently for your vocab chunks and for your sentences. So for example, with this resource, what I'd like to do is not define any custom vocab chunks, so that we're going to have the parts of to be as chunks, so yo soy, tú eres, él es, ella es, so on, our vocab chunks. But I want the adjectives themselves to be used for the vocab chunk activities too, but exactly as they are within the sentence builder table. So when I see alto, I want the translation to be tall, masculine. And when I see delgada, I want the translation to be slim, feminine. And when we see gordos / gordas, the translation should be fat, plural. So it should be clear to us which versions of the adjectives we're dealing with. And if we scroll down and look at our vocab chunks, as I said, we haven't defined anything. We're only using the default definitions. We'll see that because we've used lookups to make our changes rather than general transformations, our chunks haven't been changed at all. Remember, we only said to remove the space brackets M if we have a sentence starting with he is. So if it's just a chunk, which is just the word tall, then there's no transformation taken place. And if we look down all of those, you can see that they all work. So we have, including the parts of ser, so we, masculine, are is nosotros somos, and we can contrast that with the feminine form, we, feminine, are nosotras somos. And then we also have, for our adjectives, we have plural forms. So tall plural is altos / as, short plural is bajos, bajas, and so on. We've got a plural which doesn't differentiate between masculine and feminine there, but it is the plural version, fuertes, for strong plural, and so on. And if we look up at the top there, the same is true of our feminine singular adjectives and our masculine singular adjectives too. You'll remember that from our original Word document we had a different set of adjectives which are to do with character and personality, the first set being physical, and we can do exactly the same thing with these. Now, rather than adding them into the existing boxes or adding them at the bottom, I want to avoid doing that because I'm conscious that I want the layout of the sentence builder to be pretty much as it is now. So I want it to be in landscape view rather than portrait view. So think of a piece of A4 paper turned on its side rather than stood upright, because that's the way most laptop and computer screens work. So we want it to fit nicely on the screen and be visible. So we're going to add the extra information to the right of this table. So we're going to add here, we're going to put E and to the right of that we're going to add another column, and this column we're going to split in the same way, or merge in the same way as our previous adjectives column. So we'll have a cell for all of the plural adjectives, we'll have a cell for the feminine adjectives, and we'll have a cell for the masculine adjectives. Again, there are multiple ways of achieving the same end. I think the version of this resource that you'll find in the premium section of the website, this and column is a single column, and I'll tell you what, we'll split it in this case. We need to split it so that it splits in the correct place. There, merge those, and we can put another and there. And if we colour code our cells the same as the previous ones on the left, so that we have plural one in yellow, a feminine singular one in pink, a masculine singular one in blue, this is what our table structure will end up looking like, with our spaces there for us to put our other set of adjectives. I'll just change that to make it a thinner column, and we'll start adding the other content. So there are the masculine singular character adjectives added. I'll click on OK. They're now in our table, and I'll structure that in the same way as the other one so that it keeps the same height. So split that cell into 2 display columns, and then we'll go and add the feminine adjectives in. So I've added those in, click on OK. Again, change the view so that it matches the view on the left so that it's neat and tidy. And then we do our plural adjectives, which we'll have to present in the same way as the ones to the left, with masculine and feminine forms of each adjective. And there we have the plural adjectives in masculine and feminine forms with a plural marker. You'll notice that we have a slight difference in one of our adjectives here, because hablador in the masculine plural would be habladores and the feminine would be habladoras. So the transformations that we put in place before to transform the os/as at the end of those plural adjectives, depending on whether our subject pronoun is masculine or feminine, we're going to have to add a whole set of other rules to deal with the es/as ending that we have on habladores, habladoras. So first we'll click OK to add that content. We'll change the column view. Oh no, we don't need to in this case, it's the same as on the other side there. Okay, so that's the content is finished, and we'll go back to our transformations and add in that set of transformations for to deal with habladores. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So essentially all I need to do is copy these, do them again, but with es and as. Es becomes es, as becomes as, and so on. Okay, and if I save the changes there, we can now have a look at our vocab chunks. You'll see that our vocab chunks, we've now got more of them because we're adding more words to the table. All of our adjectives should be okay. There we have masculine singular adjectives with the correct endings in Spanish. Then we have the feminine singular adjectives, and plural adjectives are towards the bottom. So we've got good looking plural, guapos, guapas. And if I scroll down to find habladores, a talkative plural, habladores and habladoras. But in our sentences, if we verify them, we should find that the plural versions have been changed accordingly. So here we have they, feminine, are muscular and talkative, ellas son musculosas y habladoras. And the masculine version, we'll find that, contains habladores. So we made sure that even though we're including mixed content in our table, that we've transformed it so that all of our sentences contain meaningful and correct adjectives. So this resource is pretty much finished now. There's just an extra consideration I need to talk to you about. First of all, I need to add the text-to-speech language. So we're going to add our Spanish text-to-speech. And if we then look at the table by clicking into it, let's see what happens. So it should say things appropriately.
Yo soy, tú eres, él es, nosotros somos.
Okay, so the pronouns and parts of the verb are all fine. And if we look at the adjectives,
Alto, alta, aburrida, generosa, tímida.
no problems. However, when we come to these combined adjectives, which contain masculine and feminine forms, listen to what happens when we click on the speech function.
Altos as, bajos as, delgados as.
So it's saying exactly what is inside the cell there. So altos as, bajos as. Now it's likely to lead to a bit of silliness and hilarity in the class if you start having sentence builders that keep saying as all the time. So that's to be avoided. And what we need to do then to avoid that happening within our sentence builder is we need to tell it to transform that so that instead of saying altos as, it says altos altas. Unfortunately, there's no other way of doing that than typing in a transformation for every single one of those adjectives into the TTS transformations. So I'll show you how we do that, and then I'll pause the video while I quickly add them all in. Right. Text-to-speech transformations are here. Let's have a look at our adjectives. Altos as. So we need to tell it that when it sees altos as, it's going to transform that to altos, comma, altas. Now this will only ever happen when it's reading this information directly from the table, because in your sentences won't contain the word altos as. It'll contain either altos or altas, depending on whether it's a masculine or a feminine form of the verb. It's only when you're clicking into the table or when you're building from the table that you'll have this issue. And so this is the way that you get around it. So we're converting altos / as into altos, comma, altas. Now we need to do the same for all of the other adjectives. And you can see now that I've now added text-to-speech transformations for all of those adjectives, so that when you click in the table it won't say antipaticos as, it'll say antipaticos, antipaticas. Let's save the changes and I'll show you how that works. So listen now to the difference.
Musculosos, musculosas. Habladores, habladoras. Divertidos, divertidas. Simpáticos, simpáticas.
And that is that resource finished.